Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. In light of ongoing debate within and without the Parliament on the budget presentation, we continue a discussion started last Monday with President of the Supermarket Association, Rajiv Diptee. Thank you so much for the time, Mr. Diptee. I know that if it's not one thing, it's another. But I want to start off asking you, though. We spoke after the budget was presented by the Finance Minister. Since then, do you have any further thoughts on the budget since that original presentation?
Greetings to you, DK, and thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. Certainly, there's been a lot of commentary, especially when we consider the post-budget sessions that would have taken place further to the reading of the budget last week, Monday. And, we would have looked at it from a holistic point of view. One of the notable criticisms I should add is that there seems to be something missing in terms of an overarching economic strategy, notwithstanding the fact that it's predicated on Vision 2030. Certainly what we are hearing from a lot of people is that the fuel price increase was something that was heavily focused upon, and we saw more coming out of that, especially within a lot of industries that fed back into the narrative that it's something that the population did not need right now, seeing that there are a lot of vulnerable pockets within the population still recovering from the COVID-19 fallout. So there's a lot to unpack inside of this DK, and I'm sure we'll get around to it.
All right, and from where you sit, have any of the association members started reporting seeing a change in consumer habits since that? Are there any trends that are starting or being observed as yet?
One of the things that are really concerning to us is that food security is the national narrative of 2022. When we spoke about COVID for the last 2 years and even part of this year, we're in the post-pandemic period, and we would have looked at some price inflations, especially on the basics, when we consider what we've been considering. We did some price checks after the budget was read, and we looked at some of the peculiar price increases where oil, flour, sugar, rice, some of those things were concerned, and some of the inflation that we measured could be as much as 20, 30, 40%. So we're trying our best in the industry right now to see how incremental this will be, because that's really the concern right now. There's still a lot of expenses when we consider cost, insurance, and freight, where importers are concerned and what they're feeding back into the system right now, where the food chain is concerned, because foreign suppliers of goods are still having challenges with the procurement of goods, primarily because of the war in Ukraine and primarily because there's also the lockdowns in China that's affecting us. So within the sector, there's a lot of uncertainty because of the global volatile situation that we find ourselves in, DK.
And you speak to that volatility, and is it something that affects everything the same way? And I ask that because sometimes you may say, okay, well, this product has a little more flour or wheat flour in it, so yes, the increments will be a little larger in terms of that increase or the way that the price is inflated. Some things may be a little closer, but at the same time, there are things that may be married, or there may be things that are packaged so that some things are offset by others. So how do we look at that? Is it that just brace, everything is going? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct in that you are still seeing some of these products manufactured and packaged in such a way to be cognizant of the price points that consumers are able to continue to access the goods at. You're seeing some creativity at the level of manufacturing when you see the inputs of production. For example, I think National Flour Mills is using something like 30% root crop-based flour to mix with the traditional wheat flour. So it's a means of stretching it almost. And it's something that we've seen a lot of manufacturers, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but around the world, maximize the most of the yields that are available to them from the supply chains that are available to them. We're also seeing some manufacturers putting futures contracts in place so as to ensure the continuity of supply, because everybody wants to ensure that there are no kind of shortages. Throughout the period 2020 to now, there was a lot of talk that shortages would come. That's something that I in particular have not seen. Yes, we've seen some SKUs within portfolios of categories of products go scarce or go short, but they've been quickly substituted by, I would say, some savvy buying from manufacturers, distributors, and suppliers. So around the world, when you see things shorting, you're always trying to fill the voids. And I think that we've definitely had a world of distribution on their feet and on their toes, especially with trying to find goods that continue to be accessible and continue to be cognizant of prices. However, all that said, Dike, we're very much an import-dependent nation. 90% of what you see in the supermarkets is imported, at least. And the reality is that we're going to be continuing to be buying goods. I think that it's something like $1 billion in Trinidad, and at the level of CARICOM, it's around $5 billion. And I think that figure could be higher given the prices have gone up and we've seen inflation so much more. So this is all burning a lot of foreign exchange, Dike, so we're definitely having to get creative.
And in terms of that, trying to enlarge that 10%, that is local, is there any potential for forming greater links between farmers, fisherfolk, local agro-processors and supermarkets in order to, I don't know if it's change tastes, look at what is available, but where are the conversations like in terms of that level of engagement in the 2 minutes that we have on this side of the conversation?
So, that's one of the reasons we formed the Caribbean Supermarket Association, because we felt that we could do more to augment, especially those CARICOM efforts where they talk about 25% by reduction in the food import bill by 2025. That's one of the objectives set out by CARICOM, and it's a lofty target. However, that's approximately 2.5 years away, and there's a lot of work to do in that space. One of the things we've learned with consumers is that you can't force them to change their preferences. What we found is that the products that you want to put into the space of consumption need to be attractive, and they need to be appealing, and they need to taste good. So it's something that we've seen some of our own local players. For example, I think I could reference Berry Cove in Tobago. They've gotten into the production of the various members of the berry family, raspberry, strawberry, etc. And that's also created an opportunity for import substitution within Trinidad and Tobago, and also as a foreign exchange, and those two twin pillars are key aspects of how we see of driving significant local content focus within the supermarkets and by means of consumption. So, it's still a very capital intensive space, because that's a lot of technology, it's a lot of investment, and certainly the bureaucracy within certain offices needs to change. If you want to change these things, you need to put the system in place to really support it, Dike.
I want to talk a little more about those systems. When we return, we are speaking with President of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Rajiv Diptee. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are looking at issues around the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago. We do so with President Rajiv Diptee. And just before we took that break, Mr. Diptee, you spoke to the Caribbean Supermarket Association. Break it down for us. What is it? How does it impact what it is we do here?
Okay, Dike. So one of the reasons for the formation of such a Caribbean entity would be when we noted that our government and our prime minister had been in Guyana and signed a memorandum of understanding with the president of Guyana in a bid to ensure the food security within the region. We realized very quickly that if you were going to be literally planting the land in Guyana, you would need to find a market for products. For the production of whatever is grown across there. And that's something that we want to get involved in, because we want to ensure that there is a sustainable approach to Caribbean production and Caribbean food security, and also keeping in mind that we have that know-how, the new and the expertise with customers. We want to ensure that the process is facilitated. So it's something that's very nascent and it's very new, and it's something that we haven't seen or we haven't furthered as yet. But we understand that it is something that will be on the table, definitely between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, and that's something we see our focus there, and that's how we intend to take the approach, Dike.
And I think this is one of those things that I'd quantify as a response versus a reaction, because a little way down the line, when things hopefully are a little more established, it would be very different, a very different response saying, we should have had something to deal with the markets, as opposed to, and at that point in time, I'd call it a reaction. But saying, okay, well, this is what the situation is. We have the wherewithal to start this, so we can take smaller incremental steps to get where we're going in a manner that's a little more thought out. But with that in mind though, how does a larger representative body help to advocate or create different opportunities for the local association?
It does so because in it's in taking a regional approach, there are opportunities within the island for exports and imports, and it's certainly something that we need to strengthen, especially if they're going to be looking at an inter-island ferry service. That's going to create more opportunities. I don't think it exists right now, but it's something that definitely is going to be something that could formalize a very thriving informal trade, because we have boatloads going back and forth between the islands carrying different products, and it's something that can create a lot of opportunities. I think that you can do a lot more of the import substitution with regionally substituted products. And that's something we've been exploring in conversations with various business chambers across the Caribbean. And that's something, when we consider what food security is, it's just maximizing the yields. There's a lot of food wastage and a lot of crop and production wastage that takes place, especially within the islands and in Trinidad and Tobago as well. We get a lot of calls from farmers that want to move products, but we can't find markets for it. But we understand that there's a demand for it up island. So it's something that we're looking at very closely, Dike.
And the last time we spoke, someone mentioned the fact that, okay, well, this grouping is getting the opportunity or is being facilitated that they're able to have solar panels. And what about solar panels on supermarkets, especially if you have that square footage that you can place these things down? So I'm thinking that the association, not even the regional one, but the local one, enough of a voice, you're able to say, okay, well, this is something that we want to advocate for.
One of the cool takeaways from the budget was the focus on renewable energies and how those renewables work. That's something that we've been exploring. I think at all levels of business, not just retail, but certainly bigger supermarkets have bigger footprints. That solar panels, and if the possibility is there to explore off the grid power, that is something that driven by renewables, of course, is something that can be very good given the direction we're going in, with potentially higher rates in utilities to come at some point down the line. That's something that I think a lot of businesses are looking forward to. So renewables is definitely one way to go. You definitely see renewables as something that's heavily invested in vertical farming and the state-of-the-art capital-intensive farming of the future, where you can use smaller spaces to create higher yields using these kinds of technologies. But it also means at some point it does pay off if you're allowed to generate that energy in the interest of agriculture and overheads coming down.
And that if can be a big if, but we've spoken about food security, we've spoken about policy, we have spoken about potential opportunities on a regional scale. But what is the Supermarket Association's position when it comes to crime at this point in time, Mr. Diptee?
It's a national plague DK, I think it's utterly disgusting to see how the violent crime is taking place so brazenly during the daylight hours. And I mean, when you see assault rifles tearing into, what happened with the security company at the plaza the other day, and you see four guys with assault rifles, it's very, very it creates something where it's throwing business people, local investment, local business people, and potentially foreign direct investments from doing further business. I know people who want to invest their money and drive business, and that's so important in this economy, but crime is something that's really deterring us right now. We would have held a meeting with the commissioner of police a couple of weeks ago, and he would have been very, very. We were very heartened to hear that he is acting with the FULs for business people. And one of the things that really threw me off when I saw the budget is that the increase in the FULs I didn't think was necessary right now, especially when it's something that you're seeing business people already lagging behind to get the issuance thereof. So right now, crime is a major issue. You also have the issue of shrinkage and pilferage within the stores, and that's something where organized gang crime, and this is something where we've noted that there are gangs of persons who are well organized, well oiled, and moving around the country. And we've actually created our own internal apparatus at SATT to try to see how we could deal with it. So we have a network of stores who are alerted to the fact that, listen, these guys are moving around in this area. And you wouldn't believe they move from the deep south to the east to the west. So it's something that we definitely have deep concerns about, Dike.
And I can imagine if you're moving with a finite set of resources as any business entity, there may be things that you want to do for your customers in general, but you're saying, no, I need to take from that pool to secure myself a little better, be it the increased price on the FUL, be it more burglar-proofing rather, or the camera monitoring system. So is that something that you're hearing from members of the association as well?
Yeah, Dike, security is in the top three costs of operation. It's extremely high right now because I think you hit all the major ones. You talk about CCTV. We definitely have to ensure what we do is we look at the store itself, and we conduct on-site risk assessments and vulnerability analyses, because that's how bad it's gotten. We actually do these assessments, and we understand we have real concerns that it's going to be getting worse throughout the course of the year and heading into Carnival, because we've had some advisors come in and do these assessments, and they say, listen, it's just going to get worse. So we're definitely preparing our members to try to see what can be done. But for customers, definitely we try to ensure that they have the safest shopping experience. I mean, sometimes you go by these big stores and you see the security from outside in the car park to inside the supermarket. So and those things are not cheap. They're very expensive. So it's something that we always are keenly aware of, Dike.
And we want to thank you for taking the time to share what are some of the concerns, some of the things that you're working towards, and hopefully we have more conversations as time progresses, as well as activities. Thank you very much, Mr. Diptee. Rajiv Diptee, President of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, we want to thank you for tuning into In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.